Oh, this is going to be an experience. This is not a thing I normally do. The vlogging thing, I really hope the audio video thing works out because this is not a particularly good cell phone, frankly, due to budgetary reasons. So, we're doing a new series. I'm bringing back the Q&A series that we did before, Q&A with the side of video games, that kind of thing. But it's going to be a Patreon exclusive. And this is really hard to hold. How do people do this? Haha. And I do not look good at close range, so this is all lower quality in a lot of ways. But I think dwelling in this space will help me explain some of what's going on here, because I'm not psyched about this. I've been walking back and forth. I've literally been pacing just for a bunch of today, thinking about this and being nervous about this and so on. So I'll explain for the rest of the video why I'm doing this. First, I'm just going to explain what it is I'm doing first. So we had a series called Q&A with the side of video games. Users could submit questions, I would answer them, I'd be playing a video game while answering them, because I think that me playing a video game, which is what you guys are usually here for, is a better visual than me walking in circles like this, basically, while trying to hold the camera and my arm getting tired and me really wishing I had a selfie stick right about now. So I want to bring that back, partly because it's a heavily requested thing. People keep wanting the Q&A series to come back, but also I have my own ulterior motive because money is like a thing that I need to deal with at the moment. I don't like talking about this stuff. I really don't. But here we are. So it's going to be Patreon exclusive. The questions, like, you can only ask questions if you are a Patreon subscriber, and you can only watch the series if you're a Patreon subscriber. It's going to be a very simple submission process for now. We'll see if it doesn't work, and I'll come up with new ideas over time. But for now, if you want to ask me a question on Patreon, just send me a question on Patreon, and then I'll check to see whether or not you are a Patreon subscriber. And I'll be like, all right, cool, and I'll add your question to the list of questions. And I think every Saturday I'm gonna do a Q&A series. So like, it's coming soon. Like this Friday, I'll record the episode of whatever questions are in so far, and the video will go up on Saturday, and that'll be how we do that, basically. That's my plan at the moment. I hope it works out. I hope people like it. I hope people don't get mad about the fact that it's Patreon exclusive, and I'm going to do my best to try to explain why I'm doing that over the course of this video. But I want to front load with like the pitch, so people understand the show exists, where to find it, how to do this. So if you want to ask me questions, you just need to support me on Patreon, $1 or above. It's the bare minimum. You don't have to go any higher than that. And then you just ask me questions by sending me a message directly on Patreon. If that doesn't work for one reason or another, I'll come up with another way of getting the questions verified and sent and everything like that in the future, but that'll be my starting method. And then the video will be posted to Patreon, and it'll be a Patreon exclusive, and you will be notified if you'll be notified that it's up. And if you somehow don't get the notifications, like, just try checking the Patreon page Saturday or Sunday, and you'll see it there. People who are not Patreon subscribers that go to my Patreon page, it'll show up as like a locked thing. You can, and it'll be like, hey, you can only do this if you're a subscriber. That'll be how it works, basically. And that's more or less the gist of it. It might be long, it might be short. If you still want to ask questions to me, like, send me your questions in a non-Patreon context. There is the podcast, but I've found that generally the podcasts I do with Wander and Bird and Andrew, and my arm's very tired already from trying to hold. This is a weird. Let's just lock the elbow. That works way better. That's not gonna fuck anything up. Also, are you guys dizzy yet? Is this making you dizzy? I don't know how this. I'm not a cameraman at all. I'm not equipped for this. So, I found that people are less likely to send me questions for podcasts, historically. The Four Nerds Should Save the Universe podcast got fewer questions. The current Sit and Discuss podcast got fewer questions. But when I was doing the Q&A with the side of video games thing, I got a lot more questions, because I think people prefer the long, rambling, me giving the question its full attention with no interruptions and no other people in the conversation and so on. Like, people want that, which makes sense because you're people from my audience asking me questions in many cases. So the other people are probably kind of peripheral to that for some of you guys. I could see that being the case. I'm switching arms here periodically because this is weirdly hard to do. So here we go. That's it. There's going to be a Patreon exclusive series. You can only ask questions if you're on Patreon. You can only see the videos if you're on Patreon. And they'll be submitted to the Patreon every Saturday. Hopefully, I'll try to keep up on that. I don't see why it would be a problem, unless I'm like out of town weirdly, and then it might smudge a little bit where it's like, here's the question, here's the video on Friday or Monday or whatever. My plan right now is to do it weekly. As far as why I'm doing this, money's been a little scary, so, and also I'm kind of stagnating here and so on. So here I am. This is my living space you've been seeing spinning around me. It is a 10 by 10 room, and I moved here actually 3 years ago this month. I know that because I actually checked, because I remember specifically I aired the Orcs Must Die 2 playthrough with Wander. I recorded that at my old house, but I uploaded it while I was moving to cover the fact that I had less time to work and everything like that on the YouTube channel. And I guess to pace back like a little bit, like I get super nervous about this shit. So I was here for like months working my job, because I moved here because I got a job in this town, and it was not paying well, but moving here and finding a cheap place to live worked on some level. The entire reason I am able to live here is because via pure happenstance, I happen to know somebody of a similar age who has like a decent like tech job, and he has a house, that's Marty, and he rents out individual rooms to people that need a cheap place to stay in California, basically. And so that's how I got here. A friend of a friend basically happened to be having cheap rent, one-room things in a larger house. So like, this is not the entirety of my being, but this is like what I'm allowed to use, more or less. There's a kitchen, there's a bathroom, like that stuff's not in this room, obviously, but all of my working and sleeping and playing and eating and everything all occurs within this one room, this 10 by 10 space. And this is just where I am all the time. I moved here 3 years ago, got my job, and we were at a critical moment where I could not keep up with everything. I was kind of losing my mind. I was exhausted. I was working at all times because I already had my YouTube channel, but my YouTube channel was not profitable, like at all. Like, it was just a little hobby thing I had going on. But while I was working my job, I found that my YouTube channel kept increasing in subscribers and so on, and it was kind of taking off at the same time, like via happenstance. In particular, it was during like The Witness and Dark Souls 2 Scholar of the First Sin were two of the bumps that had particular noteworthy changes where this kind of became more feasible. And I had one night where I was losing my mind because I was like, I need to choose to either commit to this or not commit to this. And that's when I launched the Patreon in the first place. And Patreon, oh, that was a bad day for me. Like, what I did is I agonized it for hours. And then what I finally did is I launched the Patreon and then just went straight to bed. I'm like, I was so nervous about asking my audience for money in the first place because I'm deeply uncomfortable with that concept in general, and which is something I've had to reconcile, obviously, with the fact that that's how I live, kind of. So I just laid there in bed, refusing to look up any information about how the Patreon was doing or how the comments on the video announcing the Patreon were doing, and I was just laying there staring at the ceiling. And I sat there for like 6 hours, I think, not sleeping. I don't remember if I even really did sleep that entire night, and that was not a good day of work the next day. In general, to my surprise, the response to me launching the Patreon was positive, which I never expected. People were just generally supportive of the idea of me launching the Patreon, and that caught me by surprise because I'm used to people not being willing to pay for things and stuff like that. And also like there's like a part where people feel like you're guilting them if you talk about like the idea of supporting them. And like I'm used to the idea of hostile reactions on the internet in general. There have been hostile reactions to the Patreon since, but it's always like an isolated thing where one person gets mad like every 3 months or so. And sometimes they're from the Patreon, and sometimes they're just people that are mad at the concept of the Patreon existing on my channel, more or less. But it's a lot easier to stomach when it's one person just doing it at the time and everything. But Patreon changed my life because it made it so this could happen. Like, I am a full-time YouTuber. This is what I do for my workday. Like, I do this thing where I make like 6+ videos per day of gaming content, and I do the podcast and the live streams and the Patreon chosen playthrough. And also, because I'm Patreon supported, I'm not super motivated by trends and SEO and playing the most popular game in the most popular way and so on. I can get away with the fact that like right now Life is Strange as a playthrough is getting like 200 views per episode. And I can get away with that to some extent because of the fact that my income is not... It really throws me off that there's a camera in that part of the... Yeah, I guess that makes sense. It really... I'm largely able to get away with this stuff in a way that I wouldn't normally because of the fact that like if a series does less well, as long as I'm still being supported on Patreon, it's not that big of a deal. Yeah, more or less. And people seem to appreciate that. I do things that YouTube channels don't normally do in many cases. Like, I don't just jump on every hot new game the day it starts out. I don't exclusively play whatever the most popular AAA game is that everyone's supposed to be hyped about at that given time. I finish playthroughs, even if they're 70 episodes or 150 episodes. Like, I start a game, and unless something catastrophic happens, or it becomes a mindless infinite grind with no end in sight and no real engaging story or mechanics going on, Darkest Dungeon, Sword City, there's a couple examples of that. By and large, I do finish what I start unless there's weird extenuating circumstances or Atlas threatens to close down everyone's channel who doesn't do what they want. So like I've committed to playthroughs that most Let's Play channels would never finish. Like I've seen so many YouTube channels where somebody will like start Baldur's Gate, and they'll make it like 3 episodes and stop because their audience didn't quite give them the viewership they wanted. But like there's all those tragic comments that are all like, oh my god, they're actually playing Baldur's Gate, isn't this crazy? And then they spend an hour on character creation, then play for 2 hours, and then that's the end of the playthrough of Baldur's Gate. And it's like, it happens over and over again, but it's like, I understand on some level why people do that, because their entire income is based on whether those videos do well. And as a result, their entire way of life and their entire how everything works, like that's their incentive structure. And so I like the fact that my incentive structure is based around Patreon. It's based around my supporters specifically, and that works for me. So, recent problems. So I've been doing the conversions of getting every single form of like property and insurance and so on in my life, like under my name and with my proper address and being all paid for and everything. And like I've succeeded, like I am completely a self-sufficient adult and so on. But it's fucking expensive and all that. On top of rent, you have the multiple kinds of insurance that are all required for every American citizen just legally, between like health insurance and the car insurance, and there's a lot to go on. And then paying for a phone, even when it's like the cheapest possible phone, paying rent, like all these things add up. And unexpectedly, I've had to deal with some prices go up without me even having direct control over those prices going up. And I'm like, I didn't upgrade anything. I didn't change anything. My life is still me often subsisting on like the lowest of cost option I can get on virtually anything. But prices just go up occasionally, and I'm like, all right, great, thanks for this problem. And then I look, and unfortunately, I've actually been trending downward on my income. Hey, you stopped recording on me. Why you do that to me? Don't do that to me. Maybe my camera's trying to shut me up because I'm talking for too long, because I am. we're already like 15 minutes in. I did not expect that, but I'm just trying to be thorough and help you guys understand everything, both my like the back history and the Patreon situation and my income and what I value and what I'm doing and so on. Also why I'm just awkwardly holding this camera. But yeah, I stopped recording. So costs are not dramatically, but gradually on the trend of going up in my life, which I don't think is even abnormal really. I think that's just how things tend to go because, you know, inflation, things like that, just some stuff just goes up periodically. Sure. I'm not that alarmed by that. What I'm more concerned by is that my income has been trending down, which is a surprise because my YouTube channel is always getting more subscribers. My viewership is always going up. Specifically, I can go on Social Blade or I can go on my analytics even and just compare this month versus last month. And I'm like, okay, cool. My viewership, I have 10% more views this month, this last 30 days, than I did the previous 30 days. So like, presumably I'm doing everything right to like grow the channel and make progress, despite the fact that I am of course doing really specific, strange things that are not normally how people run their YouTube channel because they usually are more growth motivated, and I'm doing things that are kind of counter to that, but my Patreon usually supports that and it trends upward and everything. Instead, I'm finding my income's trending down. This last month, YouTube's my income from YouTube itself, via this weird algorithm of like your videos get this much viewership, and then this many ads play, and the ads are worth this much. All that math and so on. Despite the 10% increased viewership, led to me making $200 fewer. Like my income dropped by $200 on YouTube alone, which is pretty significant because that's like a 20% decrease of income just in the one location, which is like, what, that's not the normal fluctuations where it's just like, oh no, I made $20 less or $20 more this month. And it's just like, oh, whatever. Because I'm used to my income not being a literal exact number. But instead my income dropped by a double-digit percentage in 1 month. And maybe it'll just rise back up next month, or who knows. But like, it's scary shit, and it's not the type of thing I'm hoping to see happen. And you'd think like, well, at least I have my income from Patreon, right? So like that can back me up. But over the last month, I've watched as my Patreon has dropped by $100. So my income overall has dropped by $300 for one given month. And I don't know if it'll trend back up or if it'll even decrease again next month. And so I'm trying to be proactive and a little aggressive with my Patreon because I want to keep this going. And I think you guys, by and large, want to keep this going on some level. So I'm just trying to start something. I'm trying to experiment with what I can do with my Patreon that would make people like what I like to support it more and stick with it longer and so on, because that's how my livelihood works more or less. And it's for a few reasons. One, I don't want to lose the status quo of just this all falling apart. But two, like, my goal isn't just to stay here either. My goal is to make forward progress in my life, because this is not a permanent solution. And camera stopped again. I'm really bad at this, as it turns out. This whole like sitting in front of the microphone and just talking into that while sitting motionless is actually probably a better plan, generally speaking. I'm talking to this microphone even though it's not on, so this is not affecting the audio at all. But I had this plan of like, hey, you can check out my living space, and I'll probably still give you guys a tour in this video to try to put it at home, but I didn't realize how long I'd be just talking at the camera and not using the room at all. So me going through the hassle of trying to make this goddamn camera work so hard is largely not panning out so far, and now I'm awkwardly holding it like it's a tripod. So like, this has always been seen as a temporary living situation. It's very small. It's very hot. It's not even a room that's meant to be a bedroom. It's like a weird side storage room. It's 10 by 10. I'm here because California's expensive, and this is like the cheapest place I could ever find to live. And also because of happenstance and knowing a person and so on. I'm trying to progress beyond this, either to move into another apartment or something in California, or very likely moving into a different state altogether, because an upside of my income is that because I make my money via Patreon and YouTube, my income is based entirely on how the videos are doing and who chooses to subscribe to me on Patreon, which are completely like irrelevant to where I'm living. In many places, your income is scaled to where you live. So essentially, if I move to a cheaper place, I'm essentially making more money, and so that's part of the plan. And that's one of the things I keep thinking about. And it's scary, because I've lived here my entire life. I grew up an hour away from where I'm living right now. Like, I've never moved a significant distance, and I'm really bothered by the idea of just cutting ties with a lot of my friends and family, essentially, just to function in society. But that's just how it works. It's not my fault. It's not your fault. It's just how things go in these situations. Is you got to make the money to not be on the street and stuff like that. And I haven't just like lazily gone straight to YouTube like a weird pipe dream. Like, I got a college degree. I spent 5.5 years in college. I got a degree in a physical science. I sent out my resume. I got a job related to that, and it was not paying well. In fact, the market's so saturated that the job I got going out of college, when I was going into college in the first place, that job used to be an internship for college students. Like, that's how entry level it was. But after an entire year of applying for jobs, the only one I was able to get was one that was that one. But now, when I exited college, it was suddenly a job that required you to have a bachelor's degree. And I think I've looked into it since then after I've left, and now they expect you to have experience. So like, it went from being an internship job to being a bachelor degree job to being a bachelor degree with insurance job. And pretty much any job I could find anywhere pretty much seemed to be like, hey, you have a PhD, right? Or hey, you got 10 years experience, right? Like, no big deal, all that stuff. And I'm like, what the? Where do you start? How do you function as a person? And I took a different direction while I was doing my low-paid job, YouTube and Patreon started paying me more than the job did. And I was like, okay, Patreon, let's do this. You guys you've supported me enough that I can quit my job and do this full-time. Let's see how it goes. And it has largely worked out until now. But I've been here for 3 years now, this one room where I just exist at all times. This camera keeps quitting on me. But yeah, I've been here for 3 years. I don't know why it's quitting on me. I'll probably never do one of these again. Hey, if I had more budget, I could afford an actual camera. That'd be useful. But like, people ask me like, when are you gonna get like VR? And when are you gonna set that up in here? And I'm like, look at this place. Like, look at this place. This is my whole area. Look, that's my bed. That's where I sleep. There's a vacuum. I have a personal vacuum at the foot of my bed. Because that's where I can put it, because I don't have like a closet space for that kind of stuff. There's a stack of there's some comics. That's a whole block of ramen down there for emergency food. These are my blackout curtains. For the entire summer, it's 105 degrees around here, and the only ventilation is that little vent up there, and everything else around here is just like, I have 2 external windows that are giant. And so they get sunlight. 3 walls and the roof of my room are all external, so they all soak in sun heat all the time, which is not great. And I just bake in here. Not to mention the fact that there's my computer, and that computer is just generating heat all the time. So like, I kind of just cook alive in here while I'm recording, and while I'm sleeping, and while I'm doing other things. It's a weird mess. I've got blackout curtains both because I have irregular sleeping patterns due to my job, and I need to be able to block out the light and stuff like that. But I've also got it set up because I'm trying to let less heat enter the room during the day, hopefully, because it's the best I can do. The thermostat's not set up to even measure this room, so the fact that it gets way hotter than the rest of the house is not noticed by the house itself. So while the air conditioning does work in this building, it only takes care of the rest of the house except this room, basically. And so I need to keep it regulated, more or less. One solution I do is I prop this door open, This is my front door. I'm like, how do I look at this while the camera's on? I have a box fan here, which I use. And that's more or less, I'm not pointing this the wrong way. That's more or less my strategy at times, is to point a box fan out the door. That's kind of what I go for. Obvious problem. Box fan loud. Keep covering the camera when I switch hands. Box fan is loud, so I can't use the box fan while I'm recording anything ever, because I'll actively be making the audio worse, and I care about the video quality and audio quality, and I do what I can with the resources I have. So turning a box... Alright, well this whole production's a shit show. This entire explanation's not working, this video's not working. So my camera is now just ran out of space in addition to all the other problems, so I'm like, you son of a... I can't just get through this. This is why I record everything on my computer. It's because I don't have the equipment to make this other stuff work. So sorry for this failed experiment that's just making this video worse and so on, as I try to just earnestly explain a concept to you guys. But anyway, I bake in here constantly. My door has to be closed. My fan has to be off. And I have to be in this weird box that's in 105-degree weather. For my workday, so where I try to comfortably do commentary over fun video games and stuff like that to try to make an entertaining show and things like that. It's not like I'm specifically blocked from the ability to use like the living room area, technically, but there's just so many problems there. With one, I can't just lay claim to a whole part of the house that is not the part that I'm paying for access to, so I would have to like temporarily set up every single day and then break down and stuff like that. But also there are people in this house every single day at all times, and like I can't professionally do my job if there are just random passerbys walking around having conversations using the kitchen, which is in the same room as where I'd be recording if I tried to set up in like the living room. Like there's so many obstacles in the way that like don't work, where as far as I can tell the best solution is to just sweat in this room all day, even though that can't be a great decision across the board. But I have thought about many other options, and this continually seems like the best one. My dream of sorts at the moment is to like move to a colder state, and either maybe me and another YouTuber or someone might like group up and like have like a shared like 2-bedroom apartment type thing, or maybe I get my own place and then I can comfortably record in like the main area. The hope would be to be able to record, like if I had my own apartment, I'd be able to record in like the main like living room area where I'm in the central air-conditioned part of the building of my area. And also if I'm living in a colder state, then the whole thing is less of a problem in general, and I can just more comfortably do my job. And like right now it's not just my job itself, it actually affects my job, actually affects me when I'm not doing my job in other ways, because like my computer is in the room I sleep in, which is a problem because it just generates heat all the time. So I'll be setting up for, like after I do my 3 to 6 or whatever hours of recording, and then I do my hours of editing all the videos and setting them up and importing them into Vegas and having it all set to render. My computer is then rendering the computers overnight because I need to upload them in the morning. Like this is how the cycle works. Rendering is a time-consuming process where your editing software takes the edited video and turns that into a video that you can actually physically upload. You know, it has to actually make the video once you've told it how to make the video, basically via the editing. And so that's the exporting process. If you're not used to rendering as a word, the other word you would use that for that is export. Then in the morning I upload that, which is also a multi-hour process where I'm setting up all like the descriptions and tags and titles and thumbnails of all the videos as they're going up, and you can only do them like one by one more or less. You can queue them up, but certain features are only available while that video is either already uploaded or is currently uploading. But like I'll be trying to sleep in my room, and it's like my internal temperature of the room will be like 80 degrees, 90 degrees, and I'm just like, this is not a sleeping temperature. So I set up this convoluted thing where I'll like have a door. I'll have my door propped open to the exact width of the box fan, because it'll just be pumping out air, hopefully, and blowing it all out, and the new air replaces that, and then hopefully cools the room to some extent. But then I have to deal with the fact that I have like multiple roommates that all have different schedules at different times, and some of them, frankly, are assholes and don't care how they disrupt other people. And so I'll wake up to like conversations at my open door happening at 2 o'clock in the morning and stuff like that, where I'm just like, what the go? No, stop. I'm trying to sleep in here, and I'm right here. And also like, you have to deal with the fact, like, even if nothing goes wrong, sometimes just the fact that it's so hot outside and there's heat coming from my computer and other sources, that even if I try to ventilate and everything, like, I basically have to take medication to force myself to go to sleep just so I can function the next day, because trying to lay there and just sleep on my own is not working because it's just so hot. And the problem is California is so expensive, I cannot afford to live anywhere else in the entire area, which is why the more dramatic option of like the idea of like moving to somewhere else is in the cards and being considered so much, even though I'm somewhat terrified of the idea of such a dramatic move. Is like, I need to be able to sleep, man. Like, I need to be able to sleep to do my job, and I generally, somebody should not be settling, right? Like, I don't want to sound entitled. I don't want to be an asshole with all this stuff, because like I am very aware of my privilege. I'm very aware of the fact that I am, like, I grew up in a middle-class family. I've never been homeless. I have never dealt with genuine struggles. I have lived for the last few years in what is legally poverty, but I've generally felt like I'm not having like a real struggle and my life is in trouble and stuff like that, even though in legal terms I have been an impoverished person for a few years now, because I'm frankly, part of me is like, I can't believe I'm getting away with this being my job and stuff like that. So like, I am thankful for all this stuff, but also I think it's very normal to want to live comfortably. And I'm not even going, like, I don't have aspirations for like a goddamn mansion or anything. I'm just pushing for like even just having my an apartment as opposed to weirdly renting a non-bedroom room from a friend's house, basically, and kind of getting by on like a really convenient, lucky situation that almost nobody would even be lucky enough to even have in the first place. And so this kind of stuff is why I'm pushing for the idea of like being able to move, making more money, making more progress. And then also, yeah, if I live in a normal living space, like an apartment, I can make room for like the idea of VR, and and if I have the money, I can afford VR. Like right now, like some people have been like, hey, why don't you set up like a GoFundMe, and your audience can like separate from Patreon can fund you getting a VR headset. And I'm like, I don't have a place to record it though. So like, I'm like, cool. I'm not against having VR. I have certain issues with the concept of VR, where I don't think it's always an improvement for a lot of genres, and I think that's frustrating that some things are VR exclusive when they don't need to be, and that's kind of a bummer. But I'm not against having a fun new toy and doing videos about my fun new toy and shit like that. So like, I'm not against the concept of VR on those levels, but like, even if I shelled out the sheer money to have the VR set up, I literally can't do it because it requires, generally, like, VR requires like a 10 by 10 space, and like just this one room is like a 10 by 10 space. Like, that's including my bed and everything else like that. And like, I have tried to be very responsible financially. I get the cheapest phone I can get with the cheapest plan I can get. My data cap is actually capped out right now, so my phone's mobile data is actually deactivated. I've deactivated its mobile data to make sure I don't use it anymore, because I refuse to pay any sort of overages. I have not purchased new clothing for like the last several years, really. My only big investments are buying up computer upgrades, because that's my job. I'm still using the bed that I used in high school, and just making do with everything. Like, my pants and my shorts and so on and so forth are generally stuff that I was wearing, and like a lot of my clothing is actually from high school and college, because I've just been refusing to spend money as much as possible. it's actually a really weird experience. Like one of the only things I do buy is I'll buy like books and stuff like that. And there's actually like a weird guilt because I'm like, I'm Patreon supported, and like, is this like a weird thing where like I have to deal with this question of like, am I wasting people's money by using it on entertainment? But also like, if you don't get entertainment ever, you kind of are going insane because you're just working and sleeping all the time, and that's all a weird struggle. So even that like weird guilt pushes me away from spending money much on entertainment, and I tried very hard to throttle basically everything. But despite all this, I'm still like, I'm always kind of on knife's edge. I've been more recently comfortably ahead than I was when I first started this, where it seemed more reckless to do this. Like, my budget works better than it did when I started doing this full time, but having it trend down is a huge bummer, because it means after 3 years of stagnation, I might just be looking for more and more years of stagnation, and that's not a like a usable plan. Like I know, like right now, I'm sure Marty is happy to have me paying rent, and like having him be like being able to make some money off of this room, essentially, like stuff like that. But long-term solution, like nobody wants to have that YouTuber living in your house forever. Like that's not like anyone's plan. So like there has to be an exit plan, and I'm always trying to push for that exit plan and thinking about this stuff. I've never thought of this as being a long-term housing situation, to the point where I remember at one point, my mom was like, hey, what can I get you for your birthday and stuff like that, and I was like, I kind of like on a whim, I was like, there's like this cool Castlevania Symphony of the Night print that's like framed and everything that I'd kind of like to just have in my room. Like that'd be kind of a nice little thing. And they got it for me, and I've had it for like the last 3 years, because it was the first birthday I had when I moved here, and I have not hung it up because I feel guilty about the idea of like putting like holes in the walls in this room and making furnishings like that, because I see my existence here as being so temporary, which is proven to be very false. If you looked at those blackout curtains earlier, they're held up by shower curtain rods, because I didn't want to like physically install the blackout curtains in the room, because the room isn't set up for that kind of curtains to begin with, and I didn't want to like make modifications to somebody else's property and so on, because I keep thinking like, I'm gonna get an apartment, right? Like I'm gonna go somewhere. So like, I'm very aware of the fact that I'm not having genuine like mega struggles or anything, but I do think the responsible thing, not just the selfish thing and not just the thing that's best for me, but also just the responsible thing, is to be planning on forward momentum and an exit plan of some sort, because this is very much the living situation that you're not supposed to have as a long-term adult, even though a lot of millennials have all experienced the difficulty of whether or not you really can escape this kind of stuff. Because I've actually had a lot of conversations with Marty's wife, just talking about the fact that like, we don't like she looks around this room and the house, and she feels like it's magic, because we don't know other people our own age that actually have houses and stuff like that. Like that's so unusual that that's happening. Like she married into somebody that has a house, and I'm renting a rooms from somebody that has a house that's around our age, because all of my friends that are my age that I've ever known seemingly all live in like nothing. They don't have houses. This whole suburban fantasy that Americans had about 2.5 kids, a dog, and a suburban home seems to have vanished entirely, and you're like the fucking Jabberwocky or whatever if you manage to get that. I don't know why I went with Jabberwocky. I'm gonna be honest. Also, at this point, I'm just treating this as a preview of what Q&A is like, because I'm just rambling forever, which is exactly what it's exactly what the Q&A series was generally like. And so you can expect these kinds of discussions when you ask questions. I'll be this as a springboard of just rambling off, and there's all these different directions. And I at this point, I guess I'm just waffling. I'm desperately trying to articulate everything to you guys, because I want to be clear, and I want you guys to understand what I'm going for and why I'm doing this, because I don't want you guys to think that I'm just like greedily trying to find ways to get more money out of you guys. One of the reasons I'm doing this is that Patreon has a thing called exit surveys. When you're on Patreon and you unsubscribe from me on Patreon, I think it generally asks you, hey, what's up? Why are you leaving? Which is kind of like what happens when you like try to leave World of Warcraft and stuff like that and things like that. And there's a variety of answers. People tend to say their financial situation changed. That's a very common one, and I don't know how often that's literally true or how often it's people just choosing to unsubscribe while picking the least judgy sounding option, because that one sounds like it's that's the option that you pick if you want to make it sound like it's not even vaguely related to me while you're leaving. But two things that come up relatively often, there's people pick the option where they say that they thought that the creator would be more engaged with them than they are. And I get that on some level. Because what I do on Patreon right now is we do the Patreon chosen game, and that's the one thing. So if you support me for $15 or more on Patreon right now, this is the system we've been doing for years now. This is not me pitching something new. So if you've been looking at if you looked at Patreon chosen series, Beyond Good and Evil, Grim Fandango, stuff like that, if you've looked at that and haven't understood what that is, I'm about to explain that to you. Everyone who supports me for $15 or more has the option to nominate a game. What happens is when later this month, when or next month or whenever it happens, when Beyond Good and Evil is coming to a close, in the week preceding that-ish, because the moment the finale happens, I want the premiere to be the next day. I don't want to waste time in between, so it happens while the series is coming to a close instead of after it's over. I send out a message to all of my Patreon supporters that are pledging $15 or more, and those people get to nominate a game, which is they literally just get a form to fill out, and they're like, this game. That's the process, basically. And what happens is those are all put on a list, and those games are the ones that are the nominated games. Then, 2 days later, I put out a second email to everybody, and that's a thing where every single person who's a Patreon supporter on any level, even $1, those people get the option to then vote on that list. So every single nominated game that the $15 people nominated is all put together on one list, and then everybody who supports me for $1 or more gets to vote on that exact same list. So I don't nominate the games, and I don't vote on the games. It's a totally audience-generated thing. And people have mixed feelings on that. I think it's a cool series. The Patreon playthrough always does very well. It's often the most popular playthrough on the channel at all times. Every time a Patreon game gets chosen, which makes sense because it's resonating with what the audience wants, but also gives the audience a chance to interact with what happens on the channel, which I think is a valuable thing that people do enjoy. But it's not me engaging with you guys directly. It's there's this detached thing where I put up this thing and you guys vote on this thing, and then the result happens, but there's not a lot like one-to-one happening and stuff like that. And I get why that would bother people. On one level, I'm not a super social person, so I'm not great at being there for a lot of people socially and stuff like that. Like the number of you and everything, it is difficult for someone like me. Like I never wanted to work as a waiter, for example, because the idea of like engaging with people socially for your job constantly is like a thing that like I didn't think I could like do well, and so like but I've kind of found myself into an even more extreme version of that in some cases with my job, and that's kind of how things have turned out. That's the weird situation we're in. So I get the complaint that it's not me engaging with people directly, and that's why people leave the Patreon, or that's the answer they give at the very least. Like that I get on some level. The other answer people give is that they don't perceive the Patreon thing as being valuable, which I also get. I'm a little conflicted because the original goal of Patreon was just, hey, you guys can support me if you want to, and it was supposed to be like a tip jar thing, and the entire Patreon sponsored stuff thing all came later. Like I made those features after the Patreon. At first it was just a tip jar for a bit, and then because I was like, oh my god, people are actually supporting this on a scale, like I should do something with this, right? So I like came up with this whole system of a Patreon selected game because it seemed like an elegant solution, and I've been happy with how it's turned out in general. But I can see also why people would be disenchanted, feel turned off by that, and so I'm trying to provide value. That's why I'm making this Patreon Q&A series specifically. I'm trying to provide additional value to Patreon supporters so they feel like their money is going towards something that they're getting on some level, besides just being able to participate in a poll. Because I understand why people be bothered by the poll. People who pay $15 to nominate games can get frustrated over the fact that the games that they nominate can get lost in the storm because there's so many other nominated games, and like they're like, well, what if my choice isn't like that popular? Like, no, it'll never win, right? And people get frustrated with that, and then they leave, or they start pandering with their choices or something. Like, people have expressed frustration with that. And also, if you're just a $1 subscriber and you're one of hundreds of voters, then it's easy to feel like, well, my vote doesn't really matter, right? Like, if you're... It wasn't supposed to be the point. People were supposed to be subscribing because they wanted to support what I do, and then I give them an additional perk as a thank you. But people do... In reality, that's not what people do. In reality, people do, on some level, subscribe specifically because they want the value that I am proposing as being part of the Patreon. And so I'm trying to find ways to increase that perception of value because my livelihood depends on it. And so that's why I'm trying to come up with stuff like this. And one of the reasons why I'm talking about a Q&A series is because one of the things I'm trying not to do is make exclusive Let's Plays. I am a Let's Play channel. That is the content that I make. That is why everyone in my entire audience is here. That's how you found the channel. That's generally how this goes. Maybe some of you were here because of Twilight Imperium and D&D, but that's rare. By and large, you're here because I play video games and talk over them. So I want to keep that feature of my channel public, and I want to keep that as being a thing that everyone can watch. I'm cool with having one time slot be determined in content by Patreon, but not exclusive to Patreon, which is what it is right now. But I want to keep the Patreon stuff as not being ripping the features away from the main channel. On some level, I can't promise that will always be true forever, no matter what. I will always tell people. It's not gonna just come out of nowhere, but like, yeah, on someday, like, it's not imperceptible that I might be like, hey, you know what doesn't really grow my channel anyway? Like PlayStation 1 playthroughs. Maybe I'll do like classic games as Patreon exclusive or something like that. Like, I'm not planning stuff like that right now, but if I feel like it's necessary to increase the value of my Patreon, then it's not completely out of the cards, but I'm trying very hard not to make any gaming content be true gaming content be exclusive to my Patreon, and that's why I'm doing the Q&A series. It's a perk. It's an additional thing. It's like if I did vlogs that were Patreon exclusive, but I don't really have anything to vlog about where I'm like, I don't visit exciting locations, I don't have good recording equipment, I'm not a good vlogger, generally speaking, but this is that kind of thing. Like, it's like, I have a Let's Play channel, but hey, I have a vlogging Patreon, and now it's going to be like, I'm trying to do a Q&A thing. I'm trying to add this on top of the thing I already have. So like, that's more or less the goal. That's what I'm going for. I'm trying to increase my number of Patreon subscribers. I'm trying to make the Patreon subscribers I have more permanent because they feel like there's more value that they're getting for what they're paying for. And this feeds into me having more job security, basically. And I'm trying to do this all while maintaining my values, because people enjoy the fact that, like, I don't do quote-unquote things that are like selling out, like exclusively playing every popular AAA game the moment it comes out, or abandoning playthroughs the moment they don't have enough viewership so that I can make more money on other games, or, you know, so on and so forth. Mugging and yelling and screaming and acting like a lunatic and having face cam and having catchphrases and all this other shit that a lot of YouTubers do because it makes them more money because frankly appealing to younger audiences makes you more money, and nothing I do appeals to younger audiences. Basically, I try to not compromise how I do my show or why I do my show for money, but that means I need alternate revenue sources, basically, and I can't do a side job with this game, really. Like, I can't really do what I do right now and also do a side job thing on top of that. Like, I have to do this, what I'm doing right now, exclusively, or I'll have to like fundamentally change how I process my job if I wanted to try to do alternate revenue. So ultimately, this Patreon thing, like, this is my strategy. This is how I try to maintain what I'm doing right now, but also improve it over time, improve my living situation, improve the quality of the show, get hardware that I can use to do the show better, like all these other things, and so on. And then, like, even the possibilities of things like when people talk about, like, hey, you ever gonna do like a meet and greet at like one of those conventions everyone goes to? Like, I look at stuff like PAX or BlizzCon and I'm devastated and horrified because I'm like, where the fuck am I gonna have? Oh no, that's so much money. Are you insane? I don't have money. So like, I look at those things and like people talk about doing meet and greets at locations. I'm like, I can't travel. No. I get by on the fact that I don't spend money, and that's how this whole thing has worked, basically. So this is the plan, more or less. I hope this works. I hope people like it. I hope that the series does well, and that there are questions, and people, like, please send in questions. I will answer virtually any questions, generally, unless you manage to ask something so specifically, like that's just, like, something I'm genuinely uncomfortable asking. Like, don't, you know, like, there are social norms of what kind of questions you can reasonably ask another person and so on, but generally I will be frank and honest and give it a nice good look at and try to talk about things the way I do here, where I've been frankly and honestly and frankly for way too long, because this is unscripted and all off the top of my head anyway, trying to explain to you my situation and what's going on and everything. And I hope you guys understand, and I hope you guys get it. You don't have to support me. This isn't exclusively about just guilting people into feeling like they have to support me, but it's about me making myself known and understood of what my situation is, what my goals are, how you can have an effect on those things, and you can make your own adult decisions about that. Because you have your own life, your own expenses, your own situation, and like I don't want people making unreasonable and dangerous financial decisions because they feel like they're guilty and have to support me at the cost of themselves. That's not the goal of this. And also, frankly, a lot of you don't give a shit about me. It's just the truth. Like, I'm a random video you watch in a cloud of other videos, and sometimes you don't even watch them because it's just, you know, you come in on a whim sometimes, and you're not that engaged in my content, and that's fine too. That's how I view many YouTube channels that I watch. That's normal. But if you are an engaged fan, and you're a big fan of what this is, and you see yourself being, and you want to be able to watch this stuff for years in the future and so on, and you want it to improve in quality, and you hope that I am, as the creator of the content, living comfortably and so on, like if this is all stuff you care about, and you are financially capable of contributing, then please, by all means do. All you need is a credit card number, really. Like, you just hop on Patreon and you do that, and there you go. And that's all how that works. People talk about, like, hey, can I just give you like a one-time lump sum on PayPal and stuff like that? And while I'm not against that idea necessarily, the problem with like donations that aren't Patreon is just that there's no inference of longevity to it. So like, when somebody just gives me $50, it's like, cool, thank you, but also, like, I can't make life. I'm not talking about like, I would like to buy some Jamba Juice this week. I'm talking about like, I would like to make life changes, and for that kind of stuff I need like some level of assurance of like, oh, this is what my income is now. And Patreon and YouTube, like, even though they fluctuate, they're a level of stability that donations normally aren't. When you're a big time mega streamer, like, you might have so many donations that suddenly it's like, oh shit, look how many donations I have now. This is an income I can rely on, even though it's a chaotic, weird noise mess. But even Twitch streamers have subscribers, where they have the $5 subscriptions and stuff like that, and that's because the subscription model as a concept just helps encourage like the fact that those Twitch streamers will have a reliable income instead of a sporadic and insane one. And so that's what's going on here, basically, is I'm trying to find ways to make my income more stable, and then that has effects on both the longevity and quality of this channel as a whole. And I'm trying to reach people, basically. this is like an awareness campaign, essentially. I'm not demanding that if you are already subscribed, that you subscribe for more. That is an option if you so choose to do, but that is your own choice to make. Frankly, if you're already subscribed to me, I am very thankful that you're already subscribed to me, and I just hope that you stick around for a while. This is more an awareness thing of just, I want to make people aware of this and what my situation is and how they can help if they so choose, because I feel like it's possible to spread. I have 57,000 subscribers. Now, on some level, it's easy to be like, hey, look, if every one of those people donated $1, I'd be making $57,000 a month, which is, that's space logic. That's not reality. That can't happen. That's how the math works, yes, but there's the issue that, like, that many people is not how many people are actively engaged in my content, for starters, but also that's not how many people are financially prepared to help me, and so on, and there's a bunch of other variables. But like, when I make a new series, when a new playthrough starts, those videos usually get like about 2,000 views over the course of the first week. So on some level, I have 2,000 people who actively pay attention to new content that pops up on my channel, and they care about seeing what's happening on this channel and where it's going, and then, you know, from there they decide, this is a playthrough I'm not going to watch, or this was a playthrough I will watch, and you know, that decision process happens. Like when I make a new Patreon series and the premiere's happening and everyone's like, oh my god, which one is it? Like, the viewership numbers are way up there, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, like, you guys are there. And if I could just get a decent chunk of people to just donate $1, that's huge. Because if you guys don't know this already, YouTube pays like garbage. Like if you threw a concert where there was 1,000 people in the audience, like they're probably all paying like a dollar or more, and so on. Admittedly, there's a difference here because some of your viewership from YouTube comes from the fact, I mean, most of your viewership comes from the fact that it is free. Like, I get that, and that's why the numbers are inflated. But like, they're super inflated is the issue. The way that YouTube works is you need to get like 1,000 views on your video to make like $1. This is highly variable because of CPM and ad block and how many people are just blocking the ads entirely versus are watching it on platforms where the ads don't play, versus how valuable the ads themselves are and how advertiser friendly the content is. There's tons of variables. Some stuff might make $2, some stuff might make 10 cents. Like, it's all up in the air. But like, the ratio, my point is just that the ratio between viewership numbers and the money made is super divergent. You have to have a huge audience to make money off of just views alone, and so it's very hard to make money just off of the ad revenue. So if you donate $1 a month, you are doing the equivalent of watching like 1,000 of my videos that month. You are doing the equivalent of being, like, you look at that 57,000 subscribers. If just 57 people donate $1 a month, they're already giving me much more viewership, much more money than those 50,000 subscribers tend to give me, generally. Like, it's the math gets really fucking weird to try to even justify, honestly. And that explanation has holes in it to an extent, and you can probably already see some gaps there of whether or not parts of it make sense. But I'm just trying to articulate that, like, many of you might not even watch 1,000 videos in the entire lifetime of watching my channel. And that's, which means that in the entirety of you watching my channel, maybe even for years, you may not even generate a single dollar for me in ad revenue that you would generate from sending me $1 on Patreon. And if you send me $1 on Patreon for a year, that's just like $12 on your end, but that's me getting like 12,000 views worth of money from you. I don't know, it's you have to make your own decision of whether you think that's valuable and whether you think that's affordable. I think that there's a lot of people that can donate $1 and that's it. And that's like a negligible amount of money for a lot of people, but I don't know I don't know your financial situation. I don't know if that is genuinely a problem, the idea of $1 a month, but I'm just putting it out there. I'm pretty much talking in circles right here. It's a lot of me just being kind of afraid of being misunderstood or sounding demanding or entitled when I'm just trying to be genuine and very, very naked and clear in my reasoning and my situation and so on, and why I want what I want, and my reasoning for everything going on here, and so on. So yeah, welcome any new Patreon subscribers that choose to join in. Please send your questions to my Patreon by clicking that message button and, you know, sending me a message and so on. And look forward to Patreon question videos every week, hopefully, as long as the questions keep coming in. I might just make content regardless. So like if the questions dry up, I might just come up with a concept. I might just pick a topic to rant about or something. I don't know. I might just make a video about nothing. Well, not about nothing, but it isn't about questions, and just go with that if I feel like. Or I might just respond to recent comments and stuff like that as a video topic. But I'm gonna try to make weekly content of some sort, probably Q&A. But if the questions dry up, I'll try to replace that with something, because I just want something on the Patreon, and we'll see how this goes. It's all an experiment, and I don't have a team of consultants to tell me the best course of action. But speaking of which, if you yourself have like a cool idea, feel free to comment below this comment or on the post about this on Patreon or something, or even send me a message or whatever. If you have ideas of like what you think I could do to increase the value of Patreon from the perception of the audience and so on, I can't just say I'll just hop on whatever ideas you guys say. My time is restricted, my money is very restricted, and so on. Like there's a lot of ideas that people would probably involve like things that cost money and so on, and things that are a bit more extravagant than I might be able to provide and so on. But I will listen to the suggestions, and maybe someone will have a really cool, clever idea that I didn't consider and so on. But thanks for watching like always, guys. Don't feel bad if you're not supporting me. Just trying to make people aware so that those who might be that are in a position and willing to do this, and all the stars align for them, that they will be aware of this option and how it can help me. I'll see you guys next time. I'm gonna go record part 1 of the Council episode 3 now, which is now behind schedule, because this is what it's like having a YouTube channel that's run by one person with no staff. Is I ran long on discussing this, and I was supposed to do a 4 o'clock premiere of the Council, but now it's 4:06 right now, and I need to go start recording that, then edit that, then render that, then upload that, then probably edit and render this after that, and then after that's up, maybe I can get some more stuff done before the multiplayer with Wander and Bird and Durf starts tonight, which might be No Man's Sky, but I'm not sure. And actually, oh boy, yeah, doing this long rant to explain this whole situation that I'm launching might have actually set me far enough back that I'll be behind schedule for tomorrow. Yeah, this is, you know, it's a whole thing. No one can accuse me of not putting time in. See you guys next time.